Hi everyone, welcome to The Talk on Ben TV. I'm Matthew, and today I'm joined here by Tina, Luca and Michael. And the reason we're calling this segment The Talk is because I guess a lot of young people, a lot of young queer people, you know, the idea that parents give their kids the talk when they're younger is thrown around a lot, you know, about sex, about their body, about their gender. And for heterosexual people, it's quite limiting and they don't get much education, but for queer people, it's even worse, you know, it's almost non-existent. So I guess we're here today to have that talk about things around sex and sexuality. So to start off with, I guess I was just going to throw a question out there around non-monogamy or sex positivity more generally. To start off with, guys, what are your thoughts on non-monogamous relationships and I guess the stigma that surrounds them in society?
Okay, I'm going, all right. I don't have issues with it, and I know it's a topic that a lot of people are not used to. I got the opportunity to meet a woman that was in an open relationship with a man. And so she was telling me how people wasn't quite unsure of what it meant. You know, you're in an open relationship. Does that mean that you can sleep with people? Could you do this? Could you do that? And so it was quite interesting to hear her point of view of that story because, you know, people need to be educated because it's nothing wrong about being in an open relationship. It's nothing wrong being open because for them, they knew for themselves they weren't ready. They were quite young. They were in their early 20s. So they knew that, you know, they weren't going to settle down for long term, but they still want to be together. And so for them, they communicate and educate themselves. And it's just more of, can people understand that? And
that's the thing, I think, you know, more generally, a lot of people who haven't actually experienced open relationships, seeing it, they think, oh, that can't possibly work, and they held quite negative attitudes because I guess for them, by and large, you know, the idea of being in a committed, exclusive relationship long term is, I guess, the ideal, or what we're trained to see as the ideal from when we're young. So I guess, how have you, like Luca, Mike, what do you guys think?
I think it's quite actually positive that I think people who are quite young put unrealistic expectations on themselves to be in a monogamous relationship, which is putting lots of pressure on someone who's so young and limiting their kind of potential experiences. And I think these days, like open relationships and people who are polyamorous, there's definitely there's been a rise in it, which is great, particularly within the queer community. But like Tina said, there's still not a lot of education about it, and there's still people within our community that will judge people who are, you know, in an open relationship or polyamorous just because they're not 100% sure quite what it means. Yeah. So I think with a bit more education, then, and definitely with, you know, a lot more people doing it, then it will be, I think, much more socially accepted. Totally.
Do you think, I mean, Michael, going off of that, do you think, I guess, that younger people, given that, I guess, more generally, I mean, this is a generalization, but the idea that with younger generations, people are a bit more liberal and open-minded around sex, that you'll see, I guess, a decrease in the stigma around things like open relationships or just non-monogamy in general?
Yeah, like the same way that you can just see kind of young people as more progressive in general for sexual minorities, basically. But I guess for me, in terms of kind of sexual openness with relationships, like I don't want to say that, you know, non-monogamy is, you know, the best kind of form of relationship. It's just basically, I think, any relationship where people can talk to each other and be honest with themselves and with their partner or partners and communicate what they want sexually, romantically. And so I think it's kind of interesting that we, in relationships, people think that, well, you know, I have my partner, and then I have like my friends, and then I have my work, and then hobbies and everything. And basically we have all these different things that kind of satisfy us as a person as a whole. But for some reason, sex, we think, well, that can only be with one person. Like if you're in a relationship, you are meant to be 100% sexually satisfied with one person. And for some people that does work, and that's great, and it, you know, and it works for them. But for other people, it doesn't. It just, like, they can't be 100% sexually satisfied with one person. But there's this stigma around it, you know, they're like, well, you obviously don't love your partner as much as someone who is monogamous. But I think there's just a kind of increased pressure on feeling sexually satisfied with one person than there is on kind of any other aspect of your personality.
And that's the thing, like, I completely respect, you know, people that are in committed monogamous relationships. I just personally, my own personal opinion is that, you know, we're not intrinsically designed to be monogamous and only have sex with one person for our entire lives. Like, it doesn't actually seem, I guess, natural to me. And in saying that, so like when we grow up, we're surrounded by images and people telling us that you're supposed to meet somebody and be with that person for your whole life, which I think is an unrealistic expectation, like you mentioned before. And so I guess because we've been brought up thinking that and been conditioned to see that as being the ideal, anything outside of that for a lot of people is different. It's othering. It's something that they see as a negative. But I just find it so interesting because in a lot of cases, people who are in monogamous, committed relationships, you know, some of them might get divorced or some of them might, you know, not be that exclusive ultimately because it doesn't work for them. So I think, how do you think, I guess, we could shift people's ways of thinking to be more open to, for instance, polyamorous relationships or just non-monogamy more generally?
I think just more people being open about it and honest. I've got a few friends who would consider like being in an open relationship or have considered the idea of polyamory, but they haven't made that step because they're worried about what other people will say. So I think definitely just trying to get around, like educate people about it and get rid of the stigma surrounding it. Then I think, like people within the transgender community, because the stigma is reducing, then there's just been a huge amount of more and more people coming out as trans because it's become much more socially acceptable and people are learning about it more and realizing that, yes, this is actually a thing that I can do. There's support out there. So I think it can be, you know, quite similar. Just you need to not have the stigma and have more education around it. And
that's the thing, I think a lot of people see, you know, sex as being something that's private and isn't discussed openly, whereas I feel like if more people were open about their sexuality or just sex more generally, it would increase education and awareness around what would be considered normative sex. What do you think, Tina, in terms of making people more aware of it?
Well, I think one of the things is, Luca's right about education, but it's also getting rid of that pressure of you need to find that one person, you need to find, you know, you have to be in a monogamous relationship. Like for me, I do prefer monogamy, but that's because of who I am as a person. But it's also that concept of other people, you know, ones who do want to try something different, you know, that kind of, oh, you don't want that kind of thing, it's wrong, you know. So getting rid of that pressure and just being accepting of people in general, and like, you know, being more open to it, at least that way, and talking to people about it, you know, when people are actually having conversations about, oh yeah, I'm in an open relationship, or I'm dating this person, dating that person, or I have this relationship with this person, but, you know, we've had a communication, we're able to see other people. And, you know, when you look back at history anyway, back in the days, you know, the 70s, people were open up and did a whole bunch of things. So, you know, just having sexuality, sex itself as a non-taboo topic and just having fun, I think.
Thank you guys for joining me today, Tina, Luca and Michael, and thank you for watching the talk on Bent TV.